It's about solving problems for employees. What I want is to make the person's job easier. And I think the B2B industry, we still have a long way to go in that area. We can't afford to have employees doing mundane work. We've really got to keep them focused on what's going to provide the most value for our customers. And the biggest challenge that we face right now with digital is to do that well. The project team was ecstatic that we were going to be starting on this project, and the management went to the team and said, "So, we're going to be starting." And their faces just fell. We don't need that. We don't want that. And I was fairly new to the company at that point in time. So I thought, this is challenging. This is what I was brought on to do. So what do I do at that point?
Welcome to the B2B Experience, brought to you by Big Light, one of Europe's leading experience design agencies. In this podcast series, we speak to digital pioneers in B2B and tell real stories of breaking down barriers and delivering change. I'm Steve Borges, and my guest today is Tanya Czech, who left her native California to complete a master's degree in Paris. This led her to a role in Citibank, where she worked on one of the world's first online banking portals, way back in 1998. In the years that follow, she's carved out a successful career in digital marketing, in senior leadership roles, as a trainer and as a consultant, before turning her attention fully to digital transformation. She's passionate about the potential for technology to improve people's lives, but believes its adoption is our biggest challenge. And I'm really looking forward to hearing her story. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the very nice introduction. Very kind.
You're welcome. Can we start with the story behind your move to Europe and your journey from there to where you are now? So making the move from California to Paris, quite a bold move. Take me back to the moment you decided to make it.
When I graduated, I actually joined a marketing organization, and in the 90s was already part of a self-managed work team, which caused me to have quite a few lumps actually directly out of college. But I was really working on the first websites already in California. And also able to do a lot of public speaking, but I got a bit bored because it was more of a national role. So I literally packed 3 suitcases and moved to Paris. As quite humorously, some of my colleagues thought it was Paris, Texas. It was in fact Paris, France. And then I worked on my master's, as you mentioned. And for my master's, I was able to network a bit and actually had a contact then with the International American Chamber of Commerce in Brussels, actually, where I first started my first lobbying position. And then I actually started to work as an American, as a lobbyist in the EU on the first data protection acts for financial services. And from there, I transitioned actually to starting to work on the first financial service portals for Citigroup. So very much in the consumer bank.
And they were the undisputed pioneers really in online digital banking.
Yeah.
How did that move to Citibank come about?
I actually, when I first started to work for the American Chamber of Commerce, it was very much in the financial services. And so I had the actually opportunity to move into more of the nicotine field or financial services. And I felt I was a bit more passionate about financial services than working for a cigarette company, and realized it's impossible to lobby on something that you don't yourself stand behind. So financial services was something I was passionate about.
And then you moved though out of financial services. I know you joined a startup briefly, but then ended up in more of an FMCG role.
Exactly, yeah. And then I started to work very much in consumer goods, so both in luxury and also mainly focusing on hair care products. And then I made the big jump recently to actually move into manufacturing, so away from consumer luxury goods and actually into the chemical arena.
Lots of different industries. Is there something that connects them in your mind when you look back at the various roles you've had?
I thought about that when I made the shift into manufacturing, and ultimately it's about creating the customer experience. So it's about solving problems for employees, and it's about creating that experience for customers. So it ultimately doesn't really matter if I'm working in financial services or in consumer goods, because ultimately what I want is to make the person's job easier, to remove a lot of the mundane work that they have to do in their regular job, and to solve a lot of their pain points. And so for me, whether I look at the customer or actually the employee, those are for me, both of my customers all the time. So that's really what drives, that's the red line, if you will, through all of my experiences.
We've spoken before about your passion for the potential of technology to improve people's lives, their working lives specifically. Where did that come from, do you think? Can you take me back to a moment when you realized that was something that you were really passionate about?
Yeah, I think it's within all of us, if I'm really honest. So the excitement that we have nowadays, if we go into the Google Calendar and how easy it is now to manage, for example, our family affairs. So that's the same kind of passion that I wanted to bring into our working lives as well. And I think the B2B industry, we still have a long way to go in that area. And as we face more political crises, supply chain logistics, the onus is even more now on businesses to make the working lives of employees and our customers even easier. And we have more data than we ever have before. So we're well positioned now, I feel, to really create that experience. We just need to analyze that data and to make the changes and have that be a part of our working lives now so that we can actually make people's jobs easier. And I think that's going to help us retain our customers, so drive customer loyalty, and also, of course, keep our employees with us. And we can't afford any longer right now either in the financial crisis that we're in to have employees doing mundane work. We've really got to keep them focused on what's going to provide the most value for our customers. And I think the biggest challenge that we face right now with digital is to do that well.
In some senses, there's this view that B2B is behind the curve in terms of customer experience. Why is it only now that B2B organizations are starting to focus more on the customer experience?
I think it's just ultimately very complicated business to business. I mean, if we look at how many different ERP systems we have, how many different CRMs, and how many different platforms we're trying to align, I think it's very difficult for us to bring that experience forward all the time. And our customers as well, customers don't want to change their processes and how they necessarily work to accommodate how you have now decided that you're going to adopt your processes. So I think it's a complexity that doesn't necessarily put us behind, but I think what we need to do is really step up our game with digital in order to increase that loyalty with customers. And I think the ticket to success is to really understand also where the customer is, what platforms they're using, and to work around that and be flexible enough that we can support them. So the experience looks very different, if I'm quite honest, than it would be in the B2C, and a lot more complicated.
Yes, that's certainly true. You've mentioned effectively eliminating the mundane to essentially make work more meaningful. Can you think of an example of where you've seen that improvement in the customer experience?
A really good example came for us right now with launching of track and trace. So to actually have the customer understand where their order is, when the delivery will be arriving, because that impacts their production. So a really key area to support the customer in. So it was really evaluating too, how can we best provide that customer experience? And the answer is really easy digital, to actually just like you would with your DHL or FedEx to track where the truck is. So that's been a really good example for us of how we've really listened to our customers, because the idea actually came from our customers. So giving the customer a voice and a platform and showing them that we take their feedback seriously and implemented tools like that.
What's the most effective way you've found to get that customer voice, to be able to listen to customers? What are the most successful ways you've seen to do that?
Yeah. So one of the most common has been through the NPS. So the Net Promoter Score surveys that we do once a year, and not just doing the online survey, but actually having follow-up calls with the right employee to actually have that conversation with the customer to listen. And then it's not just about listening, it's also about going back and showing the customer again that you've taken action, that you're implementing it, and getting their feedback on how you've implemented it. So that's been a really key way. And then I think the other key area too, so many times, is really listening to complaints and taking action on the complaints and having the customer actually close the ticket to say, yes, we're happy with the results right now, as opposed to the company deciding, yeah, it meets our expectations, right? Or seeing customer complaints as something that you have to measure and something you have to report to management as something that's bothersome. And it's actually a really important way to listen to your customers. So those would be the two ways I think that are important. And I've integrated the customer into my projects also with customer advisory boards. Whenever we have a new project, that we're actually going out and having customer interviews. So for example, with the customer portal, I actually went out and had interviews with a lot of our top customers and hit a lot of resistance, by the way. So feedback that we already know our customers, that's not needed. You're going to oversell, you're going to overpromise with this new project. You don't want to do that. And then once we started having the conversation, we realized that we don't know a lot of information about our customers with regards to digital. Are they using marketplaces? Are they purchasing from their ERP system? There's so much information that we've had to start to gather and analyze so that we can really meet the needs of our customers. Yeah, that was a big hurdle in the beginning.
How have you made sure when you're talking about the needs of customers, you've maintained an outside in perspective rather than an inside out one?
The key projects, I've actually gone to the customer and said, these are the list of features that we're going to be implementing. Could you give me feedback as to what would help you the most? And the other area that we've worked a lot with our customers is to also understand who are their primary stakeholders? Who do they need to make happy during their regular course of the day? What are the needs from their management in terms of reporting? And so really stepping in to figure out how can we support them with all the demands that they have in their regular course of their day. And again, that's going to drive the loyalty towards us, we're convinced. But I think it's in having that conversations too, and really literally asking open questions. What pain points do you have in regards to the day? And not even looking necessarily at digital. That's our job, to figure out where could the experience be better. But that's really just direct to one conversations. And with that information, when I'm, if you will, armed with the feedback from the customer, that's one of the best ways to go back and drive the adoption and acceptance internally. Because if I come back and say, this is what your customer wants, and I'm looking at a big customer, then it makes the adoption that much easier and to sell the success of the project too.
That's an excellent transition to my next question, really, which is all about making the case for change. What have been the most effective ways you've seen or you've been able to deploy to convince an organization to act, to start changing?
So one key scenario where the project team was ecstatic that we were going to be starting on this project, and the management went to the team and said, so we're going to be starting. And their faces just fell. We don't need that. We don't want that. And I was fairly new to the company at that point in time. So I thought, this is challenging. This is what I was brought on to do. So what do I do at that point? So we actually launched right away really into a workshop mode where I had all the various colleagues also meeting with the software vendors. So there was credibility and trust that was built there. And we started to integrate ideas that actually came in from the sales team, things that would make their job again easier. So things that they would actually need. And when they had the feeling that we were doing active listening and that we were actually implementing those ideas, then we were able to overcome a lot of that skepticism initially. And then what we also did was to do a lot of demos to actually show what we've built. So we had the prototypes and we had the teams logging in to try it to see how the data was flowing back and forth to SAP. Once they had that, they could feel that in their fingertips and they had that trust in what we've built. Then we overcame a lot of the concerns that we initially had. And we did demos with the entire organization. Really made it very, very transparent to them. So that really supported us. And then, of course, the big one is again going back to the customer, but when you have customer testimonials. So when it's coming from the customer that what you've built is similar to an Amazon, then you've hit the jackpot, right? Yeah, then they have to. You really can drive adoption quicker because you have really good feedback coming from your customers.
What about managing upwards? What about convincing senior people who possibly have been in their roles, as is the case in B2B for some time, of the need to act? Can you think of a specific example where you've had to do that and how you did it?
Yeah, we really started in the past with the backward thinking, with really creating a visual diagram of how this solution is really going to make the working day for the customer easier. So, for example, in managing the plant, how could the tool support the customer with managing the plant better, with knowing exact volumes that were coming in? So we actually had this visualization of backward thinking of how this tool was actually going to solve the customer pain points. And that was really powerful to go to management because it really confirms customer centricity, that we've thought about different aspects. So that was a really powerful aspect in persuading them. And one of the things that I've learned is that typically I always say you have to do stakeholder interviews, right? That's the basic. However, I would really underscore the need to do these stakeholder interviews and really open discussions with the board members, with the top management, so you know how big the wave is that you need to ride right now? And how big is that resistance that you're going to have to surf through right now? And that way you're not confronted with any surprises in board meetings when you get that kickback. I mean, it sounds like such a boring thing to do, stakeholder interviews. I get that. However, I really think that's one of the major things that you have to understand is where is the management with regards to this work that's being done.
Can you think of a time when you encountered a level of resistance that surprised you, and what did you do in response?
Resistance is something that you face probably weekly, and you're always surprised as to what pockets it comes out of. And I think it's repeating a lot of the mantras, like to say, we're launching this in order to make your daily work easier so that you can focus on higher value efforts. And I think repeating that a lot so that people really believe it, that this is not something that we're doing in order to eliminate positions, but it's something that we're actually doing to help them in their daily work and to have a better relationship with their customers. So that's been something that I feel that I repeat a lot during my daily work, but until people really believe you and see that, then I think that's probably one of the major ways to overcome resistancy, is that you have your strategy and that you are bringing people with you all the time to believe that. And it's one person at a time. It's literally about connections with people. And I think to understand too that people are going to go through an area or a valley where they're struggling, where they're frustrated. And that's normal. As people leading these transformations, we need to understand that and support them when they're going through that valley and to bring them back up on the other side again so that we're all going up that mountain together. It's really important that you are doing the active listening and understanding where people are. And it's really one-to-one relationships.
So, based on your experience of successfully delivering change in organizations, how important has been the role of technology versus the role of people and people's behavior?
I'd say it's about 40% technology, 60% people. When you first start a new project, it's very much focused on the technology and making sure that it's able to fulfill a checklist of requirements. But after that, it's really about the people. I'm a big fan of bringing the team in early on already and defining the requirements so that we're making sure that we're meeting their needs as well. And then even in their procurement process, so that the team that's going to be using the software in that particular example sees if it's easy to use and if it fulfills their needs. Because if you do that correctly, then obviously adoption is much easier. So, but the 60% is really about the people to listen to their concerns that they have. I mean, particularly with AI, you have a lot of the concerns about the ethics. It's taking away my job, and it's understanding that. I mean, if you're really talking about technology, which is going to empower every person in the organization like AI, then it's really important that you understand too where they are with accepting it or what their concerns are if you want to drive that high level of adoption.
Do you think we generally, I suppose I'm talking about as an industry, which is a very broad question, but do you think we generally place enough emphasis on the people aspect of implementing change?
No. I mean, for example, I've discussed with a few companies as well as they're going through the process of rolling out S4, so SAP. And I've asked a lot of people, employees, do you know why we're doing this? Do you know what the benefit is to you? And the answer is no. And that can't be the case. I think anytime that we're looking at a major transformation within the company, we have to make it really clear what are the benefits to you? Why are we doing this? Because otherwise it won't be accepted. I think what we've done really well as an organization is we've also launched transformation leadership programs. Because if you always work the same way that you've always done in the past, you're going to have the same results. So we've really focused a lot now on transformation leadership. So how do I connect with people differently? How do I ask different questions? So, for example, also an understanding where people are within a project. So the bridge strategy, that's something that I've learned through this transformation program, that it's natural that people are not as enthusiastic as you are coming into this. That's normal. So I think you really have to focus on using more design thinking. You've got to work differently and you've got to have more empathy. So it's a different form of leadership.
You mentioned the bridge strategy. Do you want to just expand on that?
Yeah, so that was really one of my number one learnings coming out. As a leader within an organization, you've done a lot of work, research into this technology, into the project. However, when you first come out with that enthusiasm and start explaining to people that we're doing this, there's naturally going to be a bridge that you're going to have to cross to get over that valley of their concerns, kind of a valley of desperation where I don't want to change and I don't want to have to do this. And to learn how you can support people going through that process. That's about empathy, isn't it? It's not a typical form anymore of project management.
Do you want to just expand on what you mean by backward thinking and how that can be an effective way of communicating requirements
Yeah.
change?
So, as opposed to having the organization review what's currently possible, what we can currently do based on our technological landscape, backward thinking starts very much actually with customer interviews. So in understanding what the pain points are of the customer, what's causing them not to be able to sleep at night. And so based on that list of pain points, then it's going back and reviewing how can we solve those pain points with digital tools? And that's how we actually started our list of requirements, was based on how are we going to solve that customer's problems, so their daily needs and demands with this tool. And then we went back and actually started a list of our requirements. So we went back to the customers to ask, if we solve it in this manner, does that meet your needs?
So it's linked to another form, effectively, of design thinking.
It has elements of it. The backward thinking, we actually did a workshop together with Amazon. So it actually came out of the Amazon camp, the idea of backward thinking. We did it cross-functionally. We actually brought in IT, sales, customer service into that backward thinking workshop. And so the results, so actually a press release of how would we announce this project to our customers, that's actually what guided us the whole time. And also we had a kind of a comic strip that we created with the visualization of the customer having to work overtime, not being able to go to their barbecue at night, complete frustration with manual processes, and then, showing the customer looking at this new way of working. And so it guided us the entire time throughout the project. It was extremely helpful. And again, different form of working. Yeah, but the empathy definitely goes along with the design thinking, like you said. That's typically how you would start with your design thinking as well.
Is there anything in particular that I haven't asked about that you've learned along the way that you think it would be valuable to share?
I think one of the most important things that we've learned over the past few years right now is that a lot of the solutions that you need, so we're talking about automating a lot of our process right now, digitalizing a lot of our processes. And I think a lot of times our employees actually know what the answers are, so they know how to improve those processes. And I think if we would ask more questions and actually work on implementing a lot of the ideas of the people that work with us every day and find the technology that would support that, I think we would be a lot more efficient and wouldn't have these challenges with adoptions either. Because I really do believe, if I listen to a lot of the team members, that they know how to improve the processes, and our job is really to go back and find tools that can support them with that. I think it's about listening.
So, looking back at your journey so far, what's one thing you would do differently or wish that you'd known earlier?
One thing that I regret is probably not being more vocal. I really do believe that it's key that you have, if you will, your elevator pitch with what are the benefits, and really selling yourself with every possible opportunity. And I think that's, getting out of your shell a lot of times in transformation, but really taking that opportunity when you can to outline to people exactly how well things are going and really have that elevator speech ready whenever you have the opportunity, whether you're in the elevator with a board member or, but I think that's something that I didn't do well enough, is to really broadcast that message clearly and loudly and be more vocal.
What's your top piece of advice for others
Mhm.
who are trying to drive digital transformation within their organization, specifically within B2B?
So my number one thing is, I think, to build your network, to listen to how other industries have solved it, not just at your own, and also be open, of course, to sharing your own experiences, because what we're doing is very demanding. work. I mean, it really requires that we jump out of bed and are ready to deal with everybody's arguments every day. So I think you have to have your own group of cheerleaders, if you will, and support teams to keep you motivated every day. So yeah, definitely network with other people in your industry, out of your industry, be open to their solutions, open to implementing them, and also find your own group of people that are support you when you sometimes also get down into the
Valley of desperation.
Yes.
Yes. I've seen you speak. I've seen you speak a couple of times. Is that what essentially motivates you to put yourself up there and to speak and to position yourself as a thought leader in that respect?
Well, definitely, yes. I mean, when you're speaking about your own experiences, it causes you to have to reflect, right? So that's been really helpful to my own experiences before I get on stage. So to reflect what have we done well and what are we not doing yet well. So most of the time, whatever I'm getting on stage to, the team feels that that there's new ideas and inspiration coming their way as well. And it's also pushed me with a lot of, for example, recently on a speech on digital nudging, I'd never thought about how a Nobel Prize winner, based on nudging, how it could be used in digital spaces. Well, it's really effective in digital spaces. So I think every time you give that kind of speech too, you're finding new ways of working and can implement those as well. Yeah. So now we're implementing digital nudging.
Just to wrap things up, we have a closing question, and it's called B2B buzzword bingo. So what's one buzzword that's overused or a trend that's overhyped in B2B at the moment that you just wish would go away, and why?
Yeah. For me, that word would not be AI. For me, it would be seamless. So when I hear people speaking about seamless, I feel that it's just overly used. And it's just such a word that should be so clear to us right now that regardless of what touch point the customer is at within their customer journey, that, they should be having the same experience regardless of what touch point they're using. So for me, I'd like to get rid of seamless. And again, looking at the B2C experiences that we have, Netflix is seamless. That should be what we want to achieve. So I'd like to get rid of that word.
Very good. I shall use it no more. So we've covered a lot. We've talked about how by removing the mundane aspects of what people do at work can help them have a more meaningful experience at work, and how we all need it in the day and age that we're living in. We've talked a lot about the importance of listening to the customer and actually listening more broadly at every level. How we should be thinking beyond digital when we're thinking about transformation, where digital is the enabler of change rather than the point of change, and how if we're solving genuine problems and we're exposing the reality of the customer experience, it's easier to drive change within an organization, and how a demo is much more powerful than a business case. although I suppose, although I
Depends on what level you're at, right? Yeah.
yes, although I suppose both are still necessary.
So
The importance of stakeholder interviews in particular to help identify what sort of resistance you're likely to encounter as you go along the journey, about the fact that people and people's behavior are more important than technology when delivering change, and in order to bridge the valley of desperation that listening and empathy are necessary. So thank you very much. It's been a great conversation. I've learned a lot. It's been lovely speaking to you, and I look forward to seeing you in person at the next B2B online event.
hopefully soon. Thank you very much, Steve. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you.
Well, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, then please don't forget to hit subscribe and to share it with your network. And if you'd like to find out more about how Big Light helps its clients understand the needs of their customers and then deliver experiences that meet them, then check out our website or follow us on LinkedIn. I'll see you next time.